Hey, welcome to the Cam and Otis Show. We're a father-son business podcast where we talk with other lifelong learners about making an impact and solving big problems. In Camden, have you figured out why it ain't raining in the desert yet?
It's raining. I see the clouds out there. It's coming. It's coming.
It just ain't hitting the ground,
No,
right?
no,
Is
no.
that
We can
what's
look at
going
it though. So that's part way there.
Yeah. It's a balmy 105 degrees in Tucson today, folks. Yeah, can't beat that. And Chris, I'm guessing it ain't as hot where you're at, folks. We got Chris Moore joining us today. How you doing, Chris?
Good morning, Cam. Good morning, Otis. It's probably in the early 70s right now, but we may get up to California hot,
Ooh,
85
Oh,
today.
oh,
So,
beautiful.
that's like me in Colorado when it gets at 80 degrees. I'm like, oh man, dude, so
yeah,
hot.
yeah.
I'm praying for 80 degrees.
October will
Yeah,
be here one day.
Right?
that's right. I was going to say in January they might
Uh,
get down to 80. Yeah. Hey, Chris, one of the things I'm always I'm fascinated with because I have a lot of friends who've been in police force and things like that in that realm, and I find it really interesting how many of them will do a full career in one city and retire, but then all of a sudden it's like poop, they pop up again in another city. What is it about? What's the draw, man?
I think sometimes it's like a relationship. You give a lot to one of them, and in my case, I kind of fell out of love with the city of Phoenix as an organization.
Mhm.
I just knew my career could only go so many places, and I looked at my journey because a lot of people don't know, like the military. What do you do when you leave? What skills are
Mm,
translatable? And I really saw myself, working in private security and then a lot of those automated resume machines. If you don't have hotel or
Mhm.
security, like you just get kicked to the curb. And in Arizona, there's not too many police departments and colleges. The big ones, yes, but it's been a later evolving. And then here, there's a lot of colleges that have it. It was a way for me to translate my skills. I attended Mesa Community College in Arizona, so it was kind of back to my roots. I worked there as a kid in college, shaking doors and stuff at night. So I've kind of returned to my roots, and it gives you another opportunity because our crime is very solvable here.
Mhm.
I went from an agency that was close to 4,000 people to like 60. So I know everybody's name,
Mhm.
I know everybody's story, and that's always been an element of my leadership is just connecting on that fundamental. And it's been good in that respect. I thought I'd kind of done all I could, but there's so many ways to affect change here and get wins, and being in charge is kind of cool. I tell my friends all the time, anytime you're in a major bureaucracy, depending on what level you're at, you may not be a decision maker, you may not be able to buy anything. Where here, there's a bureaucracy understanding because you have the public's money,
Mhm.
but we were buying a police car. I never knew how to do that in Phoenix because the machine, they just told us how many cars and they were all out in the parking lot. I didn't know anything about it. So it's getting to be a little bit more on the grassroots level.
Did you have that kind of sense of like the leadership and growing the impact beyond yourself, or was that something that you kind of discovered as you made that transition? Because I think for a lot of people, it's like when you can go do it, then it's all about you and going and solving that problem yourself. Then when you can't do it as much anymore, you just start to move up in the rank or start to move out like that. Then it's like, okay, hey, how can I help other people go make that impact that I was making?
Yeah, I'll try to answer that kind of twofold. Uh, One, as I progressed in my leadership, you just begin to see what kind of influence can you have
Mhm.
at the police, much like that, leadership military. You have the squad level, 7, 8, 9, 10 folks that you work with every night. What can I do on that level? And then, uh, then I wanted to be a lieutenant, so I had a larger influence. But in Phoenix, in a lot of major agencies, you're kind of capped on what you could do. And I really wanted to promote again, wasn't in the cards. And so this is what I kind of hoped to have my own shop, so to speak. And now it's different because in my previous agency, y'all kind of spoke the same language. You knew how things worked. Here, it was learning a new system, then translating that to our folks here. And I'm really lucky. I've got people that, whatever their job classification says, they haven't read it for 10 years. They're just moving higher and higher and faster and faster. And for a lot of folks here, sometimes they transition out themselves to another department where they can get bigger opportunity. But that's, I always say that's my best day and my worst day when someone's leaving us, because I know they're also getting to do a dream as well. So I think in my leadership that, once you kind of get the, kind of that triad of relationships, process, obstacles, how do you buy something? How do you go to something? Then you get to build upon that.
How do you, talking about, I think it's always funny, and you did a great job with the nuance of this. Whenever you talk like bureaucracy, it's very easy to think, oh gosh, it's so terrible. But also, when you have a big organization, you got to have some degree of bureaucracy there. When you look at your smaller organization now, how can you apply some lessons from that big bureaucracy of the Phoenix Police Department and, still have the pros, the positives from it without going all the way into the unnecessary paperwork, you can't get anything done, don't have the freedom to do your job anymore type of bureaucracy?
Yeah, the interesting dichotomy is Phoenix had rules, policies, procedures all laid out, different departments. You had bigger infrastructure where there was purchasing, there was a travel desk. Where here it is very small and a lot of things are done department wide. And so learning how the department functioned, and a lot of policies at this college aren't in black and white. So you don't look to addendum A, B, buy a car. So a lot of it's this navigating of, okay, how do we do this? And then once you accomplish it, there's kind of that institutional knowledge now. Okay, let's try this again. And I have really good folks. One of my leadership philosophies is empower and go do it. Go call the guy. I don't need to talk to the dealership guy. You call him. And then I have another person that kind of does the money side. What do you need? I got to get a purchase order. I got to get a requisition. I still don't know what the difference is between those two things, I think. But they navigate it. And what I've found too is on this smaller thing, it isn't a department doing it, it's a person. So our folks, really, when we buy a car, it is kind of a win for the department. When we get safety equipment, we found the vendor, we got the bid, we got the allocated budget money to it. And we talk about, hey, what do we want to buy this year? And so that type of thing, I did not have hardly a hand in a large organization. They very much, parentally, this is what you get. And at times I tried some Herculean tasks to get some grants, ask for money. But a lot of times, especially during the recession of that 08, 09, 010, we didn't buy anything. I mean, Phoenix, like major cities, they were looking at layoffs. They were looking at, no overtime. Even gas, it was a big deal. So that was kind of a frustrating part where you couldn't kind of get to the goal line during those periods.
When you shift it, and I find it, I'm always fascinated by this because, like I said, I have a lot of friends in various police forces around the country that are some are going up to the big cities and some are coming down to the small towns. How was that? Did you feel this gap, if you will? Because I felt it as an operator, and then going into stepping out of the special ops unit and going into a large staff where I went from kind of the small business sort of thing where you're doing everything to the work at Lockheed Martin and I do one thing at Lockheed Martin. Did you have that kind of feeling? Shifting down.
Yeah, I'll answer it.
Lateral. I don't mean to doubt.
No, but it was
bad.
though. It was. One is, in Phoenix, I could enjoy peanut butter pretzels. Here, I know how to make a peanut butter pretzel. I know figuratively how to go get peanut butter. I know how the salt gets shaken out, and I'm not a process guy. So I have learned what's in a peanut butter pretzel here. Uh, to that point, though, I, and I guess it's a Jocko humble brag. I'd kind of done everything I wanted to do at Phoenix at a high level. And to your operator sense, I'd been shot at, I'd been at shootings, I'd been at barricades, I had done all that. And sadly, crime was such we weren't winning. We weren't solving it. Quality of life issues, we just didn't have enough people. And it was kind of a lose-lose. And I kind of got to rejuvenate myself on some of the fundamentals of policing, crime prevention through environmental design, where it is applicable at a college setting. Getting to bring I have a friend that was a SWAT trainer, getting to bring him out here, and what 16 people at Phoenix would teach all of us every year, I got one guy to come out and teach 10 of us and basically give private instruction on how to breach a door, how to use tools, and giving my small workforce more skill and confidence. And so, and a lot of our problems are solvable. I think that was the other thing that kind of helped me. I used to where I worked before, I could look on the computer and it would say all the calls holding. And sometimes I'd come to work on a Friday night at 8 p.m. One time in particular, there's like 50 calls holding in the area I worked. And when I started here, I joke, any calls holding, and they kind of chuckled like, what do you mean? And so it's kind of playful. They knew it wasn't mean-spirited, but we don't have calls holding. So when you start the day, you're fresh. We don't have serial offenders. We've got a half a dozen people that, chronically come on campus that we deal with, and, various states of unhoused or homeless. And so, but yeah, I think, what I had to do too, kind of like you were saying, Cam, on the leadership thing is I was in the varsity. Phoenix is the largest police department in Arizona, probably top 25 municipal agencies in the country, fifth largest city. And so it's really easy to kind of get that chip on your shoulder of, hey, been there, done that. And here had to come and, got to have to start not saying we anymore. And then I found myself in a position to go to our local agencies and the sheriff and take a knee and say, hey, I need something. Can you give it to me? And, sometimes you wouldn't get a call back. And sometimes I'd have to say what I did in my previous life. And, but it's been humbling to go, wow, we don't have everything. We have to ask. So I've cultivated a really great relationship with our sheriff's agency. And in Arizona, we had Sheriff Joe. I don't know if you remember that, but he was kind of a calamity of errors and kind of like a drunk uncle. He's fun to have at a party, but you don't want him, and he says silly things, but man, you don't want him in charge of everything. And so these sheriffs out here are tremendously professional organizations. It's not the political, there's some counties where I'm sure there's some characters of sorts, but we got a very professional agency here in San Diego County. And so we're really grateful. I've become a sheriff guy now. So these guys have been a great help and a great resource for us.
How do you balance those two of the micro problem solving, keeping the students safe on campus, taking care of those specific crimes versus this big macro problem? Like even, talking about Phoenix with like Sheriff Joe up there. It's like you have this macro thing where it's like, I don't even want to touch the politics and all that stuff, but I've still got a job to do right here. Like, Dad, I know when we have a lot of vets on, we talk about this, when we talk Afghanistan stuff, that micro versus the macro, the macro versus the micro, and how different those two problems can be. Gosh, I think this might be, borderline stickier of a problem because it's completely different what you're doing on a personal level and the organization. How do you try to balance those two, connect those two dots in a way that it's not just tearing you apart, how different they are?
Yeah, I think, one of the biggest, national crime cases was the O.J. Simpson trial. And, for a best practice and all the things that came into that national spotlight during that time, I was mildly obsessed with it. And one of the things was they were trying to figure out a cause of death. And there was Ben and Jerry's ice cream in the living room. And the fancy lawyer said, well, why didn't you test it? And he goes, well, we didn't know it'd be a big deal until you brought it up. Who knew you would test melting ice cream, in the 90s even. So what, being in a metropolis where sadly violent crime is acceptable, we watch the news, and, that's kind of a juxtaposition too, Kevin, is Tucson and Phoenix are big brother and little brother. They're mammoth in the size of their crime, even, which would be acceptable in Tucson would not be acceptable in Phoenix. So I had to understand that what I believed was a big deal was not a big deal, and sometimes smaller things. And so it was creating that awareness of, oh, okay, this is a big deal. This involves a high school student that's coming to take a college class, and her parents are involved. Okay, we have to take a little bit more, a harder line on this. We have to look a little closer. And so our officers are good at taking one call at a time. And that's often what is lost in a big agency of, hey, someone breaks into your pickup truck and steals your laptop. It's a big deal. Your employer can't send one back. And that would in a big city, you probably wait 8 or 10 hours for them to call you. And then they may just say, well, just report it online. And you're like, yeah, but how do I get it back? Or even to take that further, hey, I got an app. It says it's pinging over here. Well, I don't know what to tell you. We don't have time to send someone over there. And so here, we call it relationship-based policing, where we see the same students every semester. We see the same faculty. We see the same staff. And so it's very much, I can de-escalate a call by the mere fact that I've known you for 3.5 years. Someone's saying your conduct is out of control, and I go, you know what? I know what they're experiencing. I can call you by your first name, and now we diffuse that situation. And then the other thing, Cam, is I delegate quite well, and so I take pride in not knowing details of certain events, that someone has complete ownership over it. Even our commencement, graduation, big deal, once a year. I have one young man, and he's first line supervisor, and he handles it A to Z. In fact, it was a great leadership testament, is he ended up having to miss it because of a family emergency. And I said, hey man, you've done all the work. This is a leadership legacy for you. You've prepped everyone, your plan's in place. We've talked about it. You being here isn't a good plan. You don't need to be there. Yeah. And it was a good leadership lesson for him. And I still don't know all the details. So that's good.
No, that is good sometimes. Man, that sip of water I took off microphone, woo, got me. Hey, what I'm really interested in this, because I'm hearing bits and pieces of it. Even though you were in Phoenix for 20 plus years, it sounds like you're getting more fulfillment of your purpose in the current situation at this college. And in retrospect, do you see that?
Yes, I think it's one of those things you almost have to be a part of the big thing, where a lot of stuff just kind of became people's jobs. I was on a committee, because you have to have a committee to give out awards. And I was on a committee, and they talked about, this is Phoenix. There was snow, and the pilots and the helicopter had to do an evolution in the snow. And they were basically like, well, don't the pilots just fly anyway? And it's like, the guy in charge of the pilots is saying this is a big deal in the pilot world in Phoenix PD. We had 6 or 7 helicopters, and I was like, wow. And then here, when I write a commendation, it's saying this is what I appreciate. This is what I do. And small wins, the buying of equipment. The thing that I take the most pride in is Phoenix, we had a group and we did leadership development. We did mentoring, we did mock interviews. And when that sergeant's list and lieutenant's list came out, it was always fun to get 5 or 6 of the people you coached to be in that top 10. Mm-hmm. Well, here, And you know, sometimes that's a guy being a detective in gang squad, someone going to be a motorcycle officer. Here, when I can mentor the college age students that they get hired by that police department, and then I get to go to their graduation, that's life changing, both financially, career wise. A lot of times I get to meet their family. And you know, we do have a couple social media pages, and that's what gives me the most pride is I'm not solving that triple homicide, but
Mm.
I'm making someone's life better. And you know, I have a little line that I say sometimes at our events is, I came here looking for a job and I found a family. Like, I kind of felt my career was done, and there's a good dozen people in this building that, you know, I've seen them. One guy, we swore him in, and he got on a knee and asked his girlfriend to marry him. And so that's one of those, like, wow, like I thought, you know, I'd seen it all, so to speak. And just having their kids come into the station, and things that I enjoyed at a small level now, it's something that is very enriching, and just seeing people get better, you know, adding something to their job title, getting them more classification and compensation, and things that just were not a thing in a big thing. Like, everybody's job is that, and being able to have some mechanisms here where, you know, as a government agency, you can pay people more money, but also acknowledging they're doing more work.
As you,
If you were to flip things around and let's say go back to Phoenix now, or any other large force like that from your time in a smaller force, how could you shape that differently?
I think part of it, and you know how that is, you know, when General Patton gets out of his Jeep, you know, I remember reading his book talking about not looking too comfortable, you know, taking that coat off when your troops don't even have a jacket. And I think sometimes just doing smaller things better. Also, as an outsider, when I see how other agencies hire people, I just see the disservice that they do, because now I'm seeing that from the user end. I really wish, and I have some connectivity with some of the chiefs in the region, to kind of challenge sometimes what it looks like to the person that they're trying to get. And that's a small way that I kind of, and I, you know, uh, nobody thinks they're a small group. So when I came out to California, I went to a supervisor school, I went to a management school, and Phoenix would be the second largest city in California, next to Los Angeles, just a little bit bigger than San Diego. So it's a big city. But I tell you, you know, whether you got 200 cops, 20 cops, 2,000 cops, everybody thinks where they are is the best. You know, and Cam, I heard you talking about, you know, U of A and stuff. If you go to Mesa Community College, you don't know you're not a Nike school,
yep.
getting swag
Yep.
and stuff. Or, you know, where you were, that you were saying, I think rugby was not in the D1, like, official,
Right.
so to speak. So even that within, you know, the whole Title IX thing, yeah, I went to U of A, and, you know, I'm a female, I played soccer, but did you play soccer that the men's, you know, did you get that exposure and stuff? So yeah, I think I had been in a smaller agency as a volunteer, so I knew smaller, and then being large, and then really seeing Phoenix grow. When I started in 1991, Detroit was bigger than Phoenix in population. And so you
Hmm.
just, that in, and Phoenix was a slow growing city. Like, in the 50s, they were still small. Los Angeles, I think, was maybe 2 or 3 million in the 50s. You know, so Phoenix grew small and slow. And, but I think just some of that, there, you have time to do more. That was one of my edicts when I was in patrol, and those 50 call days is, hey, one call at a time. Just one. Don't worry. That's my job, to worry about what's out there. What are the board, you know, because they could see, they had visibility over the area we worked. I could have visibility over the whole city sometimes, but it's like that one call is so hard to get, you know, I hear that in, you know, buds, one evolution at a time. You just,
Mhm.
whatever you're doing, job site, customer. My wife and I stayed at a nice hotel and over the weekend, and they're known for customer service. And my son works for Nordstrom, and you expect customer service. But truth be told, whether you get your car broken into, you can be nice to somebody. You can take a little time with them, because most people, that's the only time they're going to call the police. And one thing in all my time, all the people that said, "Hey, I'm sorry to bother you," they never were. There was plenty of other people that bothered us, and God bless the 911 system.
You talking about that, and just the relationship building in general. I can tell how important that is to you as a leader, but then also in your work as a police officer. It's interesting because when you talk about a small versus a large organization, obviously it's do you have the time for the relationship build like that? But also, of course, whenever you take that time, it can change somebody's life, change the way they see the police, whatever it is. You can really make that impact on them. How do you think you can approach trying to build that up in a larger area? And whether this is hey, here's the real thing to do, or if you want to play magic wand solution, if I could change one thing, it would be this, increase the budget so you can have 10 times as many people out there so you can have those conversations. Like, what does that look like? Because I think this is one of those areas where it's a very difficult thing to solve. And so you almost have to get to that abstract, like, okay, well, what could it look like in order to find those paths forward?
Yeah, I think what happens is, short of the peanut butter pretzel scenario, the large CEO is so disconnected. It's like every Undercover Boss episode. The guy from Subway doesn't know how to make a sandwich, and much like the military and law enforcement and firefighting, you grow up in those organizations. Someone doesn't buy the police department and run it. Mm-hmm. So what was really sad was I saw the heads of the organization disconnect, be involved with politics, the city council, some of those large things, and they wouldn't sit in, proverbially a black and white police car and ride around with a person who's 22, who doesn't know how much money they make an hour, who started just like all of us. We all start figuratively at the bottom, mm-hmm. which, was always the backbone of the department, wink, wink, the front line. But it's sadly that quadrant where most CEOs spend, and really so many of your solutions are right there. Mm. And it really reconnects you with the mission, because a lot of that politics, and even in the role I'm at now, I can go out into politics, something going on with a contract or an MOU. Then I come into this building and somebody's just smiling and tell me they got a new puppy, or, they don't have that layer. And the handful of times that I saw the CEO come and ride along with a patrol officer, mm-hmm. it reverberated through the department. Even the stigmas of, oh, that chief, and now that I hold that title, that means a chief of 10, that means a chief of 10,000, up the road. And so you're still the head of the organization. And so I do try to see, or at least understand, the work that they do, where I think at that CEO level, it really should be on your calendar, in a 30-day, 1 day a week, you should be getting some visibility, and maybe 2 or 3 work sites. Mm-hmm. But especially people, when they start having geography, we have additional campuses. It's hard for me sometimes to get there. So sometimes I see the people who work there, but I have to be mindful of it too. And like we said, I'm small. So I really think that CEO, if you're not checking into your hotel, if you're not spending 20 minutes with someone to go, you really have to go do that thing 4 times before it's approved. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's always, I think I've tried to eliminate things of, if we don't know why we do it, why do we do it anymore? Mm. And just a very small thing. We open up all the doors in the morning, and we used to call every single door into the radio department. And I said, well, why do we do that? Well, if a teacher calls and says, hey, my door's not locked, we know we did it. I know, but we're still going to go unlock it, right? Yeah. So who cares who's right? Just say you unlock doors. And who knows? Sometimes we get, you give empowerment like that, and sometimes people are, they feel, you got to know all the angles with some of those policy things. But that's the thing I enjoy the most, Otis, is I can do things quick. Phoenix would take a committee in 6 months. I can get 3 people in the room and say, do you want to do that? Do you want to do that? It affects your 2 areas. Anybody else? No? Okay, let's stop doing that. And to me, the things we stop doing sometimes are almost more important than the things we, add. Very seldom does your boss come in and go, hey, I'm going to take 4 things out of your job description away. We're just not going to do them anymore.
Right.
I think that's empowering as well.
I'm really interested in Dad. I want to throw this over to you first, and then to kind of compare the 2 different worlds. But I keep just thinking back to the comparison, that when we had Scott Mann on, we were talking about the disconnect of the politics of the military versus the people actually doing the missions. And one of the things, Chris, as you were talking there, is it almost seems like, not that you need the undercover boss, TV show going all these different places, but it's like it seems like, not that you need, but it's a lack of effort to diffuse from the macro to the micro and vice versa. Like, would you agree with that, Dad? And then organizationally, what could that look like? It's almost like you need somebody dedicated to just translate back and forth.
Well, I think it's that adage that we talk about in business all the time is, what gets measured gets done. And what are the important things that you're measuring? And as a police force, it's your frontline people, your soldiers, your police officers that are right there in the front, that are your interaction with the community. And that has to get measured. It's no different than a commander inspecting soldiers in the rank, or going out to, in a World War II sort of sense, but going out to the foxhole and talking to the soldier in the foxhole, and what do you need? How are things going? You're getting your mail, and you show that personal touch. It makes a big difference. And I think that has to carry over into your business, no matter what size. CEO of Lockheed Martin. How often do you think the CEO of Lockheed Martin goes down to the plant in Fort Worth and checks the line where they're building the F-35 fighter? I'd be willing to say, now I have to ask Pawpaw, my dad, see if he, because he worked there for 20 some odd years,
Wow.
if that ever happened. Because I bet it didn't. Maybe it did, but yeah. How often does that CEO do that? So, Chris, give us your thoughts on that.
This episode of the Cam and Otis Show is brought to you by Evergood Adventure Wines. Our loyal listeners know Evergood's founder, Matthew Hexter, from his appearances on the show that never disappointed, and don't worry, Evergood Adventure Wine doesn't disappoint either. Evergood is a craft winery from Colorado that makes wine from lemons, not grapes. Picture adult lemonades perfect for your next backyard barbecue or hanging out with friends at the beach or the pool. No need to drink a warm red grape wine when it's 100 degrees out or hotter here in Tucson. Evergood over ice is the perfect refreshment for a hot summer day. They come in a variety of flavors, including lemon, strawberry, lime, grapefruit, and watermelon. These non-carbonated wines check all the boxes: gluten-free, vegan, low sugar, and low in sulfites. Best of all, they taste damn good, and they have fun names, like their OG lemon wine called Ski Pea. Yeah, you heard that, right? And I'll tell you, Ski Pea is one of my favorites. Evergood ships to 41 states, so you can order your lemon wines online at evergoodadventurewines.com. Plus, Matthew is offering 20% off for our listeners. Just use promo code CAM-OTIS at checkout to get 20% off and start enjoying these amazing lemon wines. Go to evergoodadventurewines.com or click the link in the description below and click Buy Now to redeem your Cam and Otis Show exclusive.
I've heard this concept, reverse mentoring, where on a generational perspective, you have someone that is new in the company, theoretically new in age, new in tenure. But, in the military, I know they've got that, Sergeant Major of the Army, Sergeant Major of the Marine Corps, but that's a 30-year guy. And I heard the Commandant, I think he just left, of the Marine Corps, talking about when they used to roll out something new, it'd be a 1.5-year trial program, and they'd give it to this company, give it to this company, and give it to this company. He says now we just evolve on what they're saying they need. Because he goes, we don't need that time. They're coming to us and say, we don't need that. We don't need that. This needs to move faster. And so ideally, in some cultures, well, large police departments, sometimes the chief has a driver. That may not always, but, really you should almost either a connectivity mechanism where you get people that are 3 years out of the police academy. If you're relational, it could be, hey, isn't Otis's son in the agency? Oh yeah, Cam, he's over there. Hey Otis, would Cam feel bad if I brought him into this meeting? Because I just quarterly I need to get a connection, and that person gets some assurances like, hey, you're not the narc, you're not. But just I think even technology wise, I've got people that are my kids' age that work here, and all the time they're telling me something. And so I think that's one of those things of even at times Phoenix had people that came from the outside, and one guy, he did not do well, but the joke was he came there with no friends and he left there with no friends. But some of the tenured guys, I had some tenured detectives, and they go, hey, I went down and talked to Richie. I go, who's Richie? And they go, Rich Groneville. I go, Commander Groneville? Yeah, I told Richie that's dumb. We shouldn't do that anymore. And, sometimes that guy you grew up with in the agency that knew your first name, we all get that title, to go, hey, man, did you really say that? And that's one of the things that's been difficult here is I didn't have any historic relationships. No one has ever worked with me on a first name basis. And so that's something I've had to build up where I have people now that can respectfully challenge me and go, you know what? Why are we going to make a policy on that? It happened once and he apologized, sir. I'm like, you know what? Good for you for pushing back. You're right. That's what I would have done in my previous life. We would punish 30 people for the one guy who took the car and spilt French fries in it. We're going to tell 30 people who work in midnight that they can't drive around in a pickup truck anymore. And so, but I really think they're, and police and military, maybe sometimes you have a son or daughter that's active and you get that perspective. But, sometimes those relationships aren't even the best.
Mm-hmm. What has happened, and you kind of touched on this, and we've talked a little bit of the parallelness. I've always found it extremely interesting how the structure, the leadership structure, and even some of the titles, police and fire departments also, is so similar to the military. But yet the military spends so much time and effort in training people to be great leaders. And in the police force and the fire department, because I had some friends who in New York City, one of the biggest fire departments in the U.S., who've told me about this, that it just doesn't exist. It's read a book, take a test, become a battalion chief sort of thing. And I hear that, and the same thing in the police force. You study for a test, and now you're a sergeant, and that's your leadership training.
Right.
Why is that gap there? And I think you've been doing some work to try to address that also.
Yeah, I think some states have some decent infrastructure to make up for the small agencies. So I don't have a sergeant school. I'm promoting a guy next month. Post, our accrediting body, they will send him to a school, and he'll be there with an LAPD guy, a Riverside Sheriff guy, and they get some basic instruction. To me, what the big gap is Phoenix did a sergeant school, a lieutenant school, but if you were a sergeant for 10 years, you might be getting 8 hours a year. They didn't, you didn't have that NCO path where, there's 4 ranks or so within that sergeant pay grade. And I think that's the thing too, is just, in a post the other day, they were talking about wellness in policing. Wellness has to be a cultural thing. It just can't be the box. Oh, we had our wellness training for the year. You guys fine? Yep, good. But same thing with leadership, that it has to be in the culture. And when people come to you, you have to find money to go, hey, we can send them to this thing for a day. I've been successful where the FBI has a nonprofit where they do teaching. And so I hosted a class here. It's called FBI LEDA. I hosted a class here. A friend of mine was one of the instructors, and then they gave me 2 slots. And so that worked out, and I had to network with my peers. And so that's on the small level. You have to do a lot more of that organic stuff. Hey, if I get someone to come, can you send 2 people? And then we do that with each other. Hey, I got a guy coming in. Can you send 2 people? And a lot of times someone is picking up the tab, but they want that ROI of, I'll get 20 people here. And so once again, in my previous life, we held the training. We did it all. We didn't ask anybody for anything. And, you know, ironically, when you talk about FDNY, mutual aid is, we needed mutual aid on Friday. We had a bad guy run away from us, said, sheriff, help, CHP, help, and they caught him. 9/11 was the only time FDNY had ever asked for help in the history of the organization. They had handled everything, you know, the original towers, you know, explosion and stuff. So yeah, that, but you're right, it's not embedded. And I think it's beyond that initial, you know, like check the box stuff. Hey, we sent him for 2 weeks. Yeah, he's been a sergeant for 16 years. Would you do? And especially at the mid-level, there's executive development at lieutenant and commander on the FBI National Academy. There's a lot of acronyms, Northwestern Command College, that are, you know, appreciated in the trade. But for that 20-year sergeant, there's not a lot. And I think large agencies have that kind of hubris of, well, we do everything right. Why would we want him to send him to that other department? And even sometimes, like across the border, if you said, hey, you know, Aurora, Colorado just put out this great 2-week thing and everybody's going to it. Phoenix, and, you know, Phoenix is an agency, it's not a person, but they just like, what could they have taught us? And now that I'm in this thing, I've got my eyes open to go, oh, that's pretty cool. Oh, you do this. And so very easy to become, you know, I think that business analogy would be like, you know, what are your competitors doing? Mm-hmm. Why are people, you know, a lot's been written on Apple, and even now, you know, Black Rifle Coffee, like using social media and people liking it and all that stuff. There's a lot of people have been selling coffee for a long time that, you know, you wonder how they even exist.
That's really an interesting thing. And I find it, and maybe it's the I got mine, you know, because I ran into this in the special ops world one time, because I was doing some stuff in Iraq, and then I hopped over to Afghanistan to do some kind of similar stuff, and still my regiment, still a bunch of Green Berets operating in 2 different theaters, and having all this fresh experience from Iraq. I came over and I'm kind of the interloper coming into Afghanistan. I'm working with the headquarters, and I always remember saying this to the ops officer one night, late night, right? So everybody a little tired, caffeine's not working good enough, we're draining, and I said, you know, I saw this exact same thing going on in Iraq, and he said, this is completely different. Completely different. Just shut. You don't know a thing about Afghanistan, obviously. And that's what I'm hearing. The same thing with, hey, Phoenix, look at this. Look what the Aurora's doing over there. Maybe we could learn a thing or two.
Right.
And then this is the irony that I'm hearing, is now you've stepped out of that, well, we know what we're doing, into this smaller community, and you're like, holy crap. No, there's all these other things that we could be doing.
No,
do you get that feeling going on?
Absolutely. You know, and really, you know, the fire and police are kind of like a sibling rivalry. Mm-hmm. You know, firefighters always say, the things that firefighters and police have in common is we both wanted to be firefighters, and so that's always their rivalry. But you know, Phoenix Fire Department is one of the most respected agencies in the fire service. They had an iconic chief named Alan Brunacini that was with the fire department for over 40 years. And internationally, he was well known. And there wasn't a dozen guys at Phoenix PD that had, national or international exposure. But the fire department had some people in incident command system. You know, they would go to 9/11 and be deployed, and they had major incident stuff. And even sometimes there was a little bit of that sibling rivalry where the fire department wanted to say, hey, when we were in New York, this is how the PD supported us, or those types of things, that intra-department. So I got some insights into the fire culture. I had a mentor who was a fire chief, and he let me come to some of their battalion chief meetings. And it was interesting too, because as much as the police department has evolved in the female workforce, it's still a struggle for the fire service
Mhm.
and getting females in leadership and so forth. And so that's kind of one of those other pursuits that I'm working on, is just not only the females in the profession, but then them trying to promote as well, and also introducing them to agencies that I feel are welcoming,
Mhm.
because you don't want to go somewhere and you're the one
Mhm.
or the two.
Mm-hmm.
You want to go, hey, if I go to LA, I'm pretty sure San Diego or Phoenix, I'm not the first female in SWAT.
Mhm.
So I don't have to go through some of that of, well, I can't do 40 upside down push-ups, you know, because someone just watched a reality show on Navy SEAL training or something. So yeah, a lot of parallels with the military though, because, you know, I'm teaching a class out at Marine Corps Base Pendleton, and I said, hey, can I tell a story about a Navy guy? And they all kind of looked at me. And because, you know, I think sometimes that even the agencies don't share
Mhm.
that too. And I've got a picture back there. My great uncle was a lieutenant in the Rangers and landed on D-Day. Long story, but he did survive. But just what I wouldn't give to talk to him. And I have a cousin now that's a lieutenant colonel in the Army, and both of his uncles were all enlisted in the Air Force. And so just I think he has kind of that worker bee perspective. And his nickname is the man of the people, because he's always trying to change stuff. And so I think we have that in our DNA sometimes, where you want to make things a little better for the next person.
What do you think it is that creates that barrier between the different organizations, you know, whether different police departments or, you know, going into fire, other areas, to try to learn those kind of lessons? Because I think it's such an interesting thing where it's like you look at it, it's like, broadly speaking, you're solving the same problem, fighting the same war. Like, it's all going in the same direction. It's kind of like whenever we have nonprofit people on, Dad, and they get into this, like, the pissing contest between nonprofits. It's like, who's going to feed the hungry kids? Like, no, the point is just feeding the hungry kid. Doesn't matter who's doing it. Where does that, like, I don't know, that culture of, you know, keeping it close to the chest, or however you would describe it, where does that come from? And how could we try to, you know, fix that?
Well, I think, you know, organizations have ego, and there's somewhere in that pride. We can be prideful, but we're not arrogant.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to be proud of that patch I wear, my unit designator or whatever it is, or my city. But you just can't think that you know it all.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and like you said, once in business, you start to get those blinders on that, you know, if someone innovates, you know, and then, you know, when you read those biographies or some of the titans in industry of the, you know, Chevy and Ford and different people pushing and pulling, a lot of times innovation, you know, competition drove innovation.
Mm-hmm.
And I think because we're not competing, we are the only police department. They can't shop for somebody else. They can't contract. Now, different places they can contract. You know, there's a handful of police departments that have lost out. I also think it's organizational ego. I've probably been guilty of it myself sometimes, where you stand in the room and like, oh yeah, well, I guess if it gets really bad, we'll call those guys, you know, type deal. I did notice my peers in the SWAT community, they were getting a lot more connectivity. One, because they were deploying on major operations together, but two, sometimes they needed help. And sometimes they had their own people hurt, and they knew putting those people back out online was not a good strategy. So they could reach across and go, hey, will you back us up? And so I did see that. The fire department, what do they call it? Like, not mutual aid, but there's another word, where whoever's closest goes. That's how it is out here. A lot of fire departments, they dispatch for 4 or 5 agencies, or sometimes the whole county. So it's not, you know, you see, you know, oh, that's not our city fire truck. Yeah, that's the closest one. They were driving by the hospital. And so they have a much more service-minded platform, which I think is very helpful. The fire department is, I think, better at delivering that customer service. That same Alan Brunacini, he had a Mrs. Smith book where he would write customer service books on, well, what would your mother tell you to do? Go back and get Mrs. Smith's slippers. Go back and make sure her house is locked. Go get her keys and drop them off at the hospital. And so he brought that mindset, and they were a large agency, but he had their mission statement was probably a Nike infringement, but it was, kind of a just do it, but it was don't create harm, do well. It was very just treat people well. Don't break stuff that you don't need to break stuff. And so I think that's the other thing too. You have to get influences outside your agency. And I had influences on the West Coast. I had influences, in New York. And I think that's the thing too. Having a good, if I could go back to Phoenix, I would have a book of the month club where we would do some deep dives. And even in the Jocko space, or some of these people that are very well known, we did a book with our leadership team, and we just talked about it. What does that mean to you? What does that mean to you? Could we do that? And I think that's where some agencies just got to have to align their values of, what do we want to do?
Do you think, and whether you've heard of one or you have an idea, I'm okay with the half idea if it's not quite there, but just as we're talking about, the competition aspect of it, it's like, okay, how could you try to measure against each other and have a competition? Because the competition is good, measuring is good, because then you're going to keep up on that, what gets measured gets checked, of course. But also, if, we're all blasting out each city's per capita crime rate or something, and you guys are comparing, it feels a little distasteful. What kind of way could you see to measure that, or to get that competition aspect going, use that mechanism without going into some weird dystopian, haha, our murder rate's better than yours type place?
Right. No, you're right, though. I think, a lot of times, short of California, people leave. No one, they just read something the day that we're in a negative growth or something to that effect. Police departments, sometimes your people leave. It's not as common, but also it's the choice. And that's what I see is recruiting. And in the class that I'm teaching right now, it's an introduction to criminal justice class. And I said, hey, this is a relationship you're going to have for 20, 25, 30 years. You got to choose it right. Go on their social media. Do you like what they're doing? I said, some departments just show you all bad guys. Bad guy, canine, drugs. Are they out in the community? Social media, whether you're it's someone you want to date or it's someone you want to work, they're showing you what their culture's about and what they value.
Yeah.
And locking up bad guys is an element of it. Being nice to people and going into a school is a nice element about it. And so I think that's where departments, if nobody wants to work for you and you're battling attrition and people, and it's not the $5,000 incentive. I think sometimes if people really were honest and had those true exit interviews of why you're leaving, a lot of times they're leaving for a person. So how many of those people, bullies, how many of those leaders, I felt the most, a lot of times sergeant is but really the lieutenant in major organizations is you're responsible for the morale of the shift. So if the lieutenant says, hey, nobody else is off Saturday, but Bill's getting married and you can't find a way to let all the guys in his wedding party be off, people hear about those stories and you want people to be enthusiastic about the department. So as much as someone may not pick up stakes and move from, from Phoenix to Gilbert, the police wise, they start to see other brands, if you will. And I think that's where the big sometimes don't put the effort because they know they're going to hire 100 people. There's a couple agencies that are close to us where they're hiring 20. And I'm like, you want to learn about technology? That department does drones. Are you interested in this? Do this. And they see that I just don't have to go and answer a call. And that's what, we all are infantry in the beginning. But at one point, you want to learn a trade. You want to go Well, I want to do my GI Bill. I want to get educated. I want to promote. Uh, if you want, some departments you can't fly a helicopter, but you can fly a drone. If that's a hobby of yours, how cool would it be that gets to go on calls now? So that's something where I think it's not as much the internal metric as much as that recruiting retention part of it.
This episode of the Cam and Otis Show is brought to you by Tribe and Purpose. Are you tired of dealing with the cost of bad leadership? It's time to make a change. The Green Beret Leadership Program is your key to unlocking the full potential of your team. By developing leaders in your business, you'll get a proactive and responsible team that embraces challenges, takes calculated risks, and takes action without constant supervision. Developing great leaders can take a lot of time and energy, and that's why businesses tend to opt for the trial by fire and school of hard knocks path to leadership. The truth is that wastes time and money, and it puts a lot of extra stress on your leadership team and the rest of the team. Poor leadership drives away quality talent, and the longer you wait to fix the problem, the more talent you're going to wind up losing. With the Green Beret Leadership Program, you can use the battle-tested leadership principles of the Green Berets to develop great leaders in your team faster with the School of Hard Knocks. You'll see changes in just a few short weeks. The longer you wait to take action, the more damage poor leadership can do to your business. Learn more about the impact GBLP can have on your business and schedule your free coaching call with your Green Beret coach, Otis McGregor, now at findyourpurpose.coach/GBLP or click the link in the description below. Don't leave your team to struggle on their own. Give them the tools they need to be great.
What I'm hearing, and I'll ask you if when I explain it, if you're hearing the same thing, it goes back to what Camden was talking about, and it's my pet peeve with nonprofits, is do they really want to solve the problem? And you get sometimes, and this happens in business too, you get so wrapped around certain aspects of measuring, back to that measurement thing, of measuring certain aspects that you ignore the other things. And I wonder if that's what's happening in some departments, is you get so wrapped up in the crime numbers, if you will, to rugby reference it, the number of tackles that you made in a match, but that's not the only statistic you should be worried about. And maybe that's what it is. So maybe they're losing that aspect of, they really want to solve the problem. I want to work myself out of a job so that there's no, the only job a policeman ever needs is when somebody makes it, has an accident on the road and we just got to direct traffic.
Right. Well, one of the easiest things is like you both are saying, what you measure is what you're going to see. Well, response times, every political figure response times, fire and police. And, I was looking at applying at a municipal chief job last year, and I began to study it. And it would have been a bold thing to say to political folks, but if I get there in 5 minutes and do a terrible job, who cares about the 5 minutes?
Yeah.
Exactly.
If it takes me, and sometimes because you give us 100 jobs, we're going to get to all of them in 10 minutes. But if you took 20 jobs that aren't our job, then we could get there faster and spend more time. And then also when you talk about that in police and fire, you're also saying drive faster. Really, when you start talking response time to alpha cultures, they just put that right foot on. So those are the things. And I used to tell in the police academy, I knew the head of the state police. And I said, Colonel Milstead doesn't want you driving 100 miles an hour anywhere. One of your friends are hurt, maybe, but you can't be driving 100 miles anywhere. And a lot of times we don't set the expectation at that level where everybody, and it's not necessarily the logo or the saying, but what is really important, what's important now. And I was in the nonprofit space too, and we were really lucky. We had an executive director, and she just said, the more we give, the more we make. And sometimes people wanted to get in our lane, and she would just go, hey, you take that lane. As long as the person's getting served, we don't need to say, here's our sticker. Today it would be, look, I helped this family, because all of it's bad, all of it's tragic when you're helping, all the programs that came out of 9/11. For every amazing, group, there were some other people that were just, you always kind of wondered, like, what's their angle? What are they trying to do? And so Yeah, I think it's that, just having a non-scarce mindset. Um, and people do have choices in policing. And part of that's trust. But if they don't trust you, they won't call you. And if you
Mm-hmm.
really want to affect crime and quality of life, people have to trust you that when you go out there, you'll do what they want you to do. And I call it policing to the expectations of the community. For 30, 40, 50 years, police just said, hey, this is what you need. Folgers, this is coffee you need. This is all you ever, it's in a can. You don't need anything else. You make it at home. Who would pay $5 for a cup of coffee? Nobody, right? Just put it in the can. No stickers, no commercials, So I think we have to go. People do have choice. And because we don't sell a widget, I don't know, even if I bought those 1,000 widgets, but too, that's what a sustaining brand is when you keep going back for that widget. There's 100 companies that do all those things nowadays on the tip of your fingers. And so I think the policing just has to really, what do the people want? What do they want to spend time on? Because a lot of times we're not congruent. I had a quick conversation once about how do you stop murders? And we had a low murder rate in a community and it's like, well, how do you stop it? And no one really had thought about it. We were so busy figuratively solving it and responding to it. We didn't look, and not that we're economists or social workers, but we're like, well, what? And it was low. And it's like, well, what is going on right now? Do we have good community trust? Did we do some operations that got some violent people out? Like, what did we do? And sadly, our culture at the time, they didn't really want to engage. Sadly, it's one of my best leadership stories because our chief put it out and it was like 10 minutes to 11, lunch, and no one wanted to answer because they all wanted to go to lunch. And that was really the culture of mediocrity that was with us at that time, that solving the world's problems, hey, 10 to lunch, you should have asked 20 minutes ago, boss. We would have probably given you our insights. We changed the world.
Yeah, how many times have you heard somebody joke about being that I'm the only thing standing between you and lunchtime, so I'm going to get out of the way, right?
That and the great idea at 4:30 on a Friday. Nobody wants to listen to your idea, boss.
I've had lots of those get assigned to me over the years.
Yes.
I'm just going to add that. I think it was Hark Harold. It might have been Scott Kinder, but he was talking about problem solving, and he said the problem is when people get in love with their solution rather than loving the problem. And I think that's really what you were getting to a lot there, Chris. Is it's like, how much do you care about the problem itself and actually solving the problem versus solving it the way that you want to solve it?
Yeah, and I'm not a process guy. This is what I want. This is what I think it'll look like in the end. I don't care how you get there. And so many times, like you said, agencies get into that where we're year 2 in the process, but it's like your results already changed. What you want to get to, it's already different. And there's so many smart people that we hire, and then at one point we just don't listen to them or don't want to hear their opinion. And so, like I said, I got people 20 to 60 plus in my shop, and when the 60-year-olds are listening to the 20-year-olds and the 20-year-olds are listening to the 60-year-olds, I think we all get smarter and better about it. And some parts of policing are very historic and very old school, and then some of them need another level of adaptive leadership that just, wow, I didn't know we could do that. You can just push these 2 keys and that shows you the picture. Oh, geez, that's what we need for this.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's a great lead into what did I learn, because in listening and making sure that we're hearing things and not just waving our finger and nodding our head and pretending that we're actually present and paying attention, because you never know when you're going to learn something phenomenal like I did today, and that is my new metaphor of understanding and not needing to understand how that peanut butter pretzel is made, because I never thought, how the hell did they get the peanut butter inside that pretzel?
I know, man.
It's like magic. I mean, so that's a great metaphor though, and I love that one. Camden, what'd you learn?
Yes, this is something I had heard a lot of, just if you want to stay on top of trends, stay on top of what's next, it's having that generational perspective, if you want to do well on social media, hire an 18-year-old who spends their whole day on TikTok. Like, you're not going to learn it from somebody who doesn't do it. But Chris used the term of reverse mentoring. And I love that because, come on, it's business. We're talking leadership. You got to put a phrase around it if you're going to do it. So reverse mentoring, that's it for me. I love that.
Well, Chris, how about you? What'd you learn?
I think when you engage people, and you've got that military side too, Otis, but people that are just good in their own profession, they have insights into policing. Leadership is a shared skill set, and policing is such a siloed culture for so much. We rarely ask other people, well, how could we do that? I mean, you got the consultants, but that's what I learned today, that you guys have a good breadth of knowledge by talking to so many different people that you have insights. A good friend was on your podcast a couple episodes ago, and home builder. You got insights into home building. I've learned about home building is leadership, because you build a home for a person, and how do you do that? So, no, I thank you so much for your service. I'm glad to see a father-son get to run a show together. I think that would be such a dream to be able to do that. And I enjoy listening to the folks that you have on, and I wish you continued success. And just you just have such an array of folks coming on. So I appreciate the perspectives for sure. And thanks again for the invitation.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Thank you. How do folks find you, connect with you, Chris?
Yeah, I'm on LinkedIn, Chris Moore. Got a cool picture of me with uniform on, like we're standing on a parking structure, and so it looks pretty cool. I know you're on time, but that picture is we got on the Ford Police Fleet calendar. There's 18,000 police departments in the country, and we got on it. It was about a 3-year project. So that picture that I'm a part of, that's the win with that. So
that's awesome.
Chris Moore on LinkedIn, my contact information's on there, and love to, leadership is my passion. And so I appreciate you guys letting me say some stuff today.
I was laughing there, Chris, because I want to make fun of you, Dad, because as soon as he starts talking about that, I picture your cool guy picture with the cigar, with the swords and Baghdad right behind you. It's like, you got to have a cool guy picture. Come on.
Thank God there's no more Polaroids.
Awesome. Well, Chris, thank you again for your time, man. It's been a pleasure and really enjoyed it.
Appreciate you too, gentlemen. Take care and continued success.
Thanks. Camden, run us out.
All right. Thank y'all for listening to today's episode of the Cam and Otis Show. And a special thanks to our guest, Chris Moore, for joining us today. Remember, you can watch full episode of the show on YouTube at the Cam and Otis Show. If you enjoyed today's episode, make sure to pass along to other lifelong learners in your life. You can also follow the show on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. As always, a full archive of our episodes is available at www.camandotisshow.com. Thanks again, and we'll see y'all next week.